but they're here from
somebody who's from that
somebody
element.
who can connect with them.
Yeah, from that element.
But I think that the sad thing is, the ones who can connect with them, and I think that's what this whole fatherless thing is at. They didn't have no fathers, and so now that what can they do? And I would have to say that's where it lies. I don't know. I don't know what else to say besides that.
T-Side, where you at?
I'm everywhere right now. As far as the children or the younger generation needing someone who's been there, while I think in theory that's correct, I really don't see it because I am the guy that was in the streets. They know I sold everything. They see me out there fighting. They see I had a rep. They see, me on the block rapping, and they know I was out there with them. They knew I was the guy that all the younger ones looked up to. Mm-hmm. And even today, I'll see some of them, and they'll talk about who I was and how much they looked up to me. And one even calls me a legend. But when I tell you that as this legend that you say I am, that path you're going down that I was already on is not a good one for you. I could say this repeatedly, and it doesn't matter to them. One, because you have more voices saying that's the right path. Mm-hmm. The rap culture, which actually came in with the degradation of the family as part of it. Mm-hmm. 1970s, I believe, when it started. But you have the welfare state, you have the rap culture, which all aided and pushing, these young men further down in the wrong direction. So for me as a voice, even though they know I was there, they're hearing it more from the guys who are benefiting from it, and that's the direction they're taking. As far as the effect on fathers not being in the home, it's a rough topic because it makes me hold myself accountable, even for my own failures as a father. Right. And having two children that, though I'm active in their lives, I'm not in the home. Mm-hmm. You see, so there's still hardships that I've put on my children from not being in the home with my children. And I didn't have a father. My dad wasn't there. So all I knew was to sleep with girls. Mm-hmm. I was told this is what you do. This is how you become a man, and this is what a man does. Man, he gets sting off, and if you don't do that, then you're not a man. And I had to learn.
And now that's the girls have followed suit. Yeah. And that's what they're looking for in the features of a man is a guy that has multiple women.
Yeah.
Or at least the capacity. They may want you to be loyal at the moment, but if you aren't pulling them and you're not known for that, they're not attracted. I'm not making this up. This is what I'm getting. From elsewhere. You know what I mean?
So I got a question for you. You said you were told that this is what a man does. He gets girls XYZ. You were told that from your mother or from just the culture itself?
My mother didn't have anyone really consistent, and the dude that she was with was a lame.
So he taught you that?
No. But from what I seen, I didn't see a good man coming from him, or I didn't see her with any good men. But the community is what told me. Like, I grew up out BH.
Yeah.
You find out real soon that if you ain't getting none, then you're really a nobody. If you're not getting any from the girls, if you're not on the block, if you're not with the fellas, then you're not with the fellas.
So this definitely has to be a generational thing, because 102 Brightway, I was there from 4th grade to a year after high school. So, 9 years, 10 years, somewhere around there. And that wasn't. We all walked around there lying. We knew we was lying. Nobody getting nothing.
That happens today too.
Okay, all right. But we all was lying, but I will be honest with you. Back then, I can look back at I can look back at a lot of the families, you know, and I'm just doing a real quick scan. There were men in the homes with the women. There really was. That's amazing.
Yep. It's crazy.
Yeah, and this is out BA. Some, you know, all of this stuff is, you know, happening in the projects, you know, or you know, public housing or whatever you want to call it. But so yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, I think it's by design. I think the destruction of the family is a necessary. It's necessary for the state to get the power or the government to gain the power, to gain the dependence that it needs for it to grow and to flourish.
Yep.
You know, because where you have limited government, you have the family unit.
Yep.
The stronger the government gets, they do things like the welfare state. They give you the hip hop culture. When the welfare state came in, you actually see a spike in divorces as well, because you make it possible for the woman to survive without the man, you know, and to have no real need at all.
Yeah.
So then it still it sounds like to me, even though we were trying to, you know, not discuss the systemic racism, you know, it sounds like that's what it's still going back to.
I think it's not systemic racism, it's systemic classism to me.
Okay.
I think that's what it is.
Yeah, there's no evidence that it was really based on race. The narrative we're fed is it was black versus white, but man, we had Jews owning slaves, you had blacks owning slaves, you know, you had whites owning slaves in America. Before
whites enslaved.
Yeah, and whites enslaved in America. But before the welfare state, blacks were actually doing good. And I believe Thomas Sowell references how the entire construction force was blacks. And they would actually come from the south to the north to underbid, you know, and get jobs because they could. And they were good workers, you know. So it wasn't like we were doing so bad and we didn't have anything. We were actually doing great. You know, and it had nothing to do with race. It was just we worked. You know, you got what you put. You get out what you put in. But they being government. They're designed to
it's
break up
actually
the family.
higher than government,
Well,
but
The powers that be.
Well, and once again, I don't, you know, I'm not totally on board with the not systemic racism. The reason why I'm not totally on board with it, you know,
what is systemic racism?
and I was going to give an example.
Okay.
And from my understanding, is when a system, you know, discriminates against a race, whether it's the black race, white race, or you know, anything like that. So, and let's say a system would be the banking system. All right, I think we're all familiar with redlining, and if we're not, those who may not be, redlining is when what banks would do is they would basically draw a red line around certain neighborhoods. All right, and most of those neighborhoods that they drew the lines around were poor black neighborhoods. And so if anyone lived within that red circle, when they come to apply for a mortgage to buy a home, because this is the land of, you know, if you've made it once you own a home. All right. So if I'm living within that circle and I go to the bank to try to apply for a mortgage, you know, regardless of my credit score, I'm still denied for whatever other reason. Credit score is great, but now they use income as a means of not getting a loan. So now, in order for me to get me and my family out of this neighborhood right here, which happens to be, you know, a majority black neighborhood, or definitely poor, then the likelihood of me getting my family out of there, or getting my family out of public housing, or getting my family, you know, into something more stable, all of a sudden, you know, dwindles. And so I believe that, you know, with, you know, things like that going on,
and you're talking about that exists today.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Okay. I just want to make sure you weren't talking about something.
It's illegal today.
No, it
redlining.
is illegal, but just in case, because I'm part of a CRA group, and I'm not even going to try to promote that here, but just at a conference in DC, a few months ago.
What is CRA? For everyone who doesn't know?
Community Reinvestment Act,
Okay.
Or associations, and basically they're I was in DC and we learned that even our local senators, both Biden and not Biden, oh Lord have mercy, Carper and Coons, they both voted to lax, the Dodd-Frank laws, which strengthens, CRA developments inside of banks, which basically says banks, you have to show who you're lending money to and who you're not lending money to. So now they voted to say, nah, we're gonna kind of lax those laws. They don't have to do those, have those report cards now. So now we don't know which banks that are loaning money. We don't know which banks will loan money. I mean, that are not loaning money, this, that, and the other. So to me, that's relevant to what we're talking about now. Right. If the father isn't there, all right, that has to be dealt with from a moral standpoint, I think even from a Christian standpoint. Okay, but can you help this single mother out of the ghetto? Let her get a piece of property that where she can raise her family, so that they can see something other than drug selling and
I want to confirm that even from my experience, it's not made to help you get out.
Right.
The system, the aid, the system that's there. Yeah. It's not made to get you out.
Absolutely not.
And then like we talked about earlier before, actually, recording all this, is that the recipients aren't planning on getting out.
Right.
A majority of them. And
I think that's why I can't say. I think what is done, especially with redlining, as an example, is we look at a part of it and connect it, associate it with racism, but I don't see that as proof of systematic racism, only because we as a people, I'll just use the black community, we created the stigma around us. We've not supported, but we fulfilled the statistic of black people, of being ratchet, of not wanting to get out of the system, so where we see redlining, for example, where we see that take place is after the blacks had proven themselves to be pretty much like animals. That's just, I know it sounds crazy, but when we start acting,
I couldn't say that. That would be crazy.
When we start acting like, when you act like the people that they see you as, you can't tag that as racism because you fulfilled the narrative, and now they judge you according to what you have, to the prevailing perspective on this group of people. If this happened when blacks when they owned things, and they were still redlining you, even though you had the family, you were doing good, you owned land and all that, and they still wouldn't give you anything, then it's like, okay, see, that seems like racism. But when you become that thing that they fear, and now they don't want to do with you, I don't think that's racism. I think that you've pretty much shot yourself in the foot at that point.
So, okay, say
or
for
shot others in the foot.
So,
that's
what I was about to say.
This gentleman with a beautiful button-up shirt on,
right up to his neck, face all swollen and tight, son. Unloosen the button a little. Like you hear about the
They just feel bad for you. We gotta give him an opportunity. But he shows up
that's all I was about to
having
say.
nothing to do
None of that stuff
with the animalistic, savagery or whatever. And that's, I think, bigger picture. We don't realize how our actions influence so many others. Like that. You're a representative. Like, you're a representative of the church.
Mm-hmm. That's
that guy's
why
a representative
really,
of his community, not just the black community, but people that live at Brightway. So when someone from Brightway comes who wants to only be there for a minute, comes to get a loan.
A hand up, not a handout.
Yeah,
Right.
comes to get a loan. Credit scores, man, it's up there right with anyone else that's from Shawnee Acres or whatever, regular community, not regular, you know what I mean, just residential area.
Yeah.
I did have two questions. I know you had a response to T, but I had two questions, and he kind of touched on it, which I'm glad, but not that again. I don't. White people so scared to talk, man.
Go ahead, talk.
I know I wouldn't offend you. I just
Man, you're white? I didn't know that.
That's Elder Keith.
Yeah. Oh man. He white. Oh snap. Someone else like, he is. I never even know. But I don't say this because of that. Because again, for those that don't know me, I don't have an agenda.
Yeah.
To try to make it your fault, Black community. I'm not, but trying to whittle out, trying to get down to, like, for instance, the redlining. Yeah. For face value, and there's a bunch of stuff when there's debates and conversations about systematic racism, there's a bunch of things that we take for face value, and we're like, see, it's based on race. And that's our perception. It looks like that's the case. So the only question I had is that I'm not sure if see, we would probably define, not you and me, but people would define systematic racism differently. And that's why it's important to ask, what do you mean by systematic racism? I see people have successful conversations, and they happen when we define terms. And then so we know how, when you speak of sexism, or being sexist or misogynistic, what do you mean by that? So that's why I asked about systematic. Now, or systemic, excuse me. And I think that I may be more to a class or a group of people that is going to say that the system doesn't express through its policy, procedure, and laws that if you're of this race, you can't get it. And that's what many, I'm not going to say it's the right definition, but that's how racism used to be systemic. Yeah. Because it was expressly stated, you can't eat here, you can't drink here, you can't bank here, you can't, and that's where they're saying that system is not tolerated anymore, that there's laws against it. There's laws against discrimination when it's discrimination. And I think the other side of it is like, man, they doing it, they just ain't saying it.
The language changes.
The language changes.
Right.
But my question about the red line is, and maybe a banking expert or maybe you could speak to it, but is the redlining based on race, or is it based on risk?
I think,
because I know with banks,
this is just
based on risk.
I'm not a CRA, I'm not a CRA representative, but I believe they use risk as
the reason.
Okay. Absolutely.
Now is it? Now, is it justified risk? Like T said, and not necessarily gunning each other down the street, but have they seen pulled data from like the last 20 years of loans coming from homeowners or coming from people that live in this district, in this area, and said 80% or 60% or 50%, either foreclosed or late on payments or whatever the case may be. And now as a bank, they're looking at that track record and saying, man, this district is a high risk area. And is that what they're doing, and is that justified?
Yeah. From what I know, that is not what they're doing. They're not looking at this particular area. They're the ones who are the most riskiest, because that would almost. That would be like crazy for, and I'm thinking of, what's that bank that has the horse and carriage?
Wells Fargo, right?
Yeah,
Wells Fargo.
Wells Fargo. Yeah.
Wells Fargo.
Wells Fargo.
Well, just saying.
Yeah, Wells Fargo, and that's a local bank here, but they recently just. They lost $1 billion lawsuit. When I say billion, not just 1 billion, but they were taken to court because of this redlining and other unfair lending practices.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's why I sincerely ask. Yeah, because I don't know,
and I'm not an expert on it, so I can only speak on what I know. But that's one of the reasons why they have this new. If you guys seen it on television, this new campaign, PR campaign. The old Wells Fargo. We're going back to what we originally, I mean, so and I learned about it when I was over in D.C. I'm like, what? And then when I've heard some of the customers here in Delaware, talking about some of the things that Wells Fargo was doing to them, and I'm like, yo, that is real. I thought it was just something,
So my question would be, is that systematic? Because when you say systematic, I'm thinking of the system as a whole. So if it's the banking system, I'm thinking the entire system, not some within the system. Because we can do the same thing for groups, that because these men are racist, that the entire group is racist.
No.
So when we say systematic, I'm thinking the system itself, not some within the system, because there are corrupt banks. I work for M&T. We learned a lot about redlining and some of the things that went on during the housing bubble, but that wasn't universal to every bank.
No, it wasn't universal to every bank.
And I think the same thing is with the redlining or other aspects where there are some cases where the people in charge were racist, but if for me to believe that the system is racist, we'd have to understand then why is it that the same system implements laws against racism. You see, like if the system as a whole is racist, then it doesn't seem like it's in its best interest.
I think the reason why laws are put in place because it's inherently wrong. It's wrong to racism is wrong, and so for anyone to fight against that when the norm, people normally say, yo, that is not right. When the majority of a people are saying that is not right, they have to put laws in place to show that okay, we're not racist. Yeah.
The language just changes. That's what it is. The language.
The guy who owns the bank.
Is that true? Is that interpretation though? That the language has changed.
The language just changes.
But it means the same thing.
But it still means the same thing.
But now it's like, okay, to make it look better,
right?
We're going to change the language and draw in more people.
Here you go. Here's a good example. Let me put on this dolly. Let me put on this long skirt. You know what I mean? With Bishop Foster say, these cotton dock stockings, this, that, and the other. So now I'm saved. Okay, well, you did it, you did the
dressed
outward thing.
Yeah, dressed
but
it up.
inwardly, you're still crazy, So I think, and like I said, I'm not, I personally cannot say that, I've had a problem with, with a bank. I just recently went and applied for a mortgage and got approved. Wish I could have got more, you know what I mean? But I didn't, And it was based, and I think it was done fair. It was based on, but this is what your income says you can get. Yep. But there are hundreds and thousands of other people who said that even though I did the same thing that you did, it didn't work out for me.
Can you go to another bank?
Can I go to another bank?
I'm not.
That was my question.
Like, because we've now said, like, we use Wells Fargo.
It'd be one thing if it was just one bank, but I don't think redlining was put in place because one bank was doing it. I think it was something common within the banking system. Because the bank that you worked at, PNC Bank,
M&T.
M&T, they taught you guys about redlining because it was a common practice within the banking system. So if it was a common practice,
they implemented that because of the lawsuits that had just came, not necessarily because it was a universal practice. Just like with the housing bubble and informing you about how they were giving, which is crazy. Because if we use redlining to justify systematic racism in the banks, then what was the housing bubble where they were just giving money?
That wasn't right either.
That
wasn't right either.
So it's like, so now we just give you money because you're black. We just give you money, and their thing was just to give, just like with redlining, you take away from this area. You stay away from this area. With the bubble, they were just giving, knowing that cats could not sustain, what they were being given. They couldn't
That
pay
was
it
just
back.
pure greed,
Yeah.
They knew they were going to default, but they get to cash out on the front end.
Because them guys don't care about they only care about one color,
Green.
and that's green.
Yeah.
That's always been my question. If something is, even if it's done by racists, if they can make money off you, they will. That's what slavery's about. It wasn't black,
race.
black, red, anything. It was whoever can we get to make money off of. How do we run our business? How do we run our houses, our farms, and build our towns and whatever, on nothing? And it still happens today. I just shared on someone else's post that there's over 35 million known slaves in the world today, and no one is talking about them. No one cares about them. It's a great narrative for how much oppression and injustice. But if we care that much about oppression and injustice, how come we're not lobbying Congress and protesting out front of Washington, about the slavery that still exists? So I want to agitate a little bit, ask an agitating question or whatever. There's an angle that would say, so if I'm a business owner, right? I start the Keith Adams Bank, okay? I ain't got too much to loan y'all, by the way. I'm taking all applicants, but I ain't got much to get. Yeah. We're just starting off, But I've got my bank, right? And my bank, runs. How does the bank make money? Loaning at interest.
Money.
Yeah, loaning at interest. But mostly, or I charge you extreme amounts for a checking account and make a little extra. But anyway, so if I look at Bruce and I'm like, nah, you can't get no money here. Why can't I do that? If it's my money in my bank.
If your bank is privatized, you can.
Aren't all banks?
Then he should be able to do that.
Yeah.
It's like any private business has the right to.
I'm not saying it's right, but I think the world, our country, but I think sometimes we look at things wrong and we think someone should stop them from not wanting to hire a gay man or not wanting to hire someone that looks like this or does that. And if it's their business, we all are, well, not we all, but a couple of us here, are self-employed, have our own businesses. And I don't want no one else telling me I had to hire someone and let's say it was a gay guy and they know I'm a Christian who says, I think homosexuality is wrong. I don't have no problem with gay people. And he could be a dope,
videographer.
Yeah, whatever, whatever he's being hired for. But either I can't pay him or I don't have, I don't have the work to keep, whatever it may be. But I'm now exposed to someone telling me who I should hire in my business or who I should, give certain prices to in my business or payment plans or whatever the case may be, or I'm discriminating and I'm biased. I'm like, it's my freaking business. Yeah. I have to make the best decisions I have to. And ultimately, everyone hates capitalism and hates the big CEOs getting the big checks and the chairman's getting the big money. But you didn't start no business. You didn't build nothing from the ground up.
Right.
You didn't expose yourself to liability and debt and employ 1,000 other people to do so. Mm-hmm. I think they have a right to make a little more. But guess what? I'm a guy that has worked for myself. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think that if I'm the one that exposes myself to all the liability, if I'm the one that takes my hard cash, and which most of the time a lot of people don't, but they use somebody's money. But nonetheless, if I'm the bank, if I'm the business owner, if I'm Walmart, if I'm whoever, and I'm Sam Walton and I start a business, and I'm like, you know what? Just how he came in dressed, and you call it hip hop culture, I call it lazy no good. Mm-hmm. Because you came in with your pants sagging, mm-hmm. Clothes don't fit you, you got a rough cut beard, you know what I mean? It's not all trimmed looking pretty. And I look at that like, that's not a good worker. Mm-hmm. Man don't respect himself. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying it's right. I'm just saying at what point. You
have the right.
At what
Though
line?
It may not be right, you still have the right. If it's a private organization, something that you created, mm-hmm. if it's not funded by the government, you have the actual right to discriminate as you will.
Until it's taken away.
Yes.
Because if it's not, see, I think laws are good and situations like that are good when we're protecting people that are being held down, but I'm not holding you down by not giving you my money. Mm-hmm. And if it's a private bank, I mean, we're asking them to borrow money we don't have, which, like you said, is the way of the world. It's how you know you've made it in this world, is because you can get a mortgage, you can get a house, mm-hmm. But I don't know. I'm just throwing that concept in the ring that it's like, well, before we start even saying it's not fair, why is it not fair? It's his money. It's his bank.
Yeah.
Does it have to be fair?
I think it should.
It'll be fair. If it's theirs, that's cool. That's fine. It ain't gotta be fair. I won't agree with it, but it's yours. You know, if I go to work for somebody, and they lay me off after a week, well, I'm gonna be like, "Oh man, that ain't right. It ain't right, but we don't need you."
Yeah. Because are they in business to give everyone a hand up? Are they in business to make sure everyone has an equal opportunity? No. They're in business to make as much money as they can, and they're going to do that however they see fit.
They're going to protect their own interests.
And I'm not saying that that's virtuous or righteous or moral, but is it completely immoral to say, yeah, people that live here, I don't want to give them money?
I think it is.
Yeah. How so? Why should I be obligated to give you money if you live in a district that I don't want to give money to? Just playing. I really don't care. And I really don't. I'm just.
No. It's a good question, because it's the right thing to do, and if.
But I opened a business.
Yeah.
To earn an income.
What's right to you may not be right to me.
I agree.
You know what I mean?
I agree. I didn't say it was illegal.
Yeah.
I just think it's unfair if you don't serve everyone. Like, for instance, I was faced with that. I ain't gonna lie. I was faced with that challenge with, with when I started, BTN photos. I'm like, man, what happens if, someone, if a gay couple comes in, they want to, get some photos done. And I ain't gonna lie, I hope and pray that it wouldn't happen, but it did happen, and I will be honest, I was kind of blindsided because, when the young lady hit me up, she was letting me know I'm getting some engagement photos done and this, that, and the other, and we met, and when the day came, we met at the shooting location, and I saw her get out the car. I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, I think that is her. And then when I saw her, her partner get out the car, I'm like, oh, well, that looks like another female. Well, maybe he's in the car too, but yeah, Bruce is crazy. But see,
He must be in the back seat.
yeah, I'm like, okay, maybe he's in the car too.
Yo.
And next thing you know, nobody else got out of the car. And I'm like,
Oh no,
snap.
it's just them.
Yeah, that's it's crazy.
I
Because
can't
that's what
wait
it
to
was.
rewatch this.
Oh,
And I was like, yo, it's just them. And so, I'm like, so what do I do?
Tell him Terry Neal's on the way.
Right.
But
But it all came down to, I'm just gonna give my best at the project. And I think that the photos were dope. You know what I mean? I don't support, homosexuality or gay relationships, but they're still people.
But did you not have a right to reject the service?
You're right. I had the right to refuse because it's a privately owned business. So I understand that. But I'm just saying, to me, it wasn't right to deny them, a good quality product. That's just me. It's a moral thing to me. So I don't know. If you say you're in the business of, if you say that you open up a bank to loan money to, to the community or whatever the case may be, then hold fast to your word and loan to the whole community.
I think if they came with proper documentation, I see a track record of how you was trying to get your credit up, you have things paid on time, the same criteria that I would hold to someone else in a different neighborhood, and you're in this neighborhood and yours add up. If anything, I would commend you a little bit more because you was in this environment and still did it. So yes, I would loan a person a bank money from that area that came with that criteria, that came correct, because that like I said, if anything, I would look at that as even more of an accomplishment. Well, you had these circumstances and still did it. Yeah, I want to help you get out of there. So I don't know. That's just me.
Would you have done the pictures had you known? Because I feel like she didn't say, and you was just kind of, oh yeah, I got you.
I probably would have. Honestly, I probably would have. Because I know me.
I'd have said no.
Nah.
Okay. Well, let me answer first.
Oh man.
That was T-Sock.
Yeah.
No, ma'am.
No, I probably would have because, I don't support, gay marriages and things like that. But hey, look, I'm in business. Keith said it. When you first posed the question, I'm in the business to make money. I can serve who I want to serve. I think.
But you don't want the bank to do that.
No, what I'm saying is,
I'm just
as long as you're serving everyone.
I saw an opportunity.
As long as you're serving everyone.
I think the question is, did the bank come out and say we will serve everyone? Like, did we read that, or are we assuming that?
So are we for a business choosing, or are we for a business being forced to serve everyone? Because what if it was the other way around? What if you had said, look, I really don't support, same-sex marriages. I'm going to have to decline. All respect. I wish you the best, but I don't think I'm your
Supreme
photographer.
Court with the Bakers.
Yeah,
That was the first thing that came to my
Supreme Court
mind
with
too.
the Bakers.
and the Bakers won too. The Bakers won. They did win.
So, but you would have that right?
Yeah, they won.
I didn't know.
You do you feel like you should have that right?
Yeah, I do feel that I should have that right. But from a moral standpoint, I think I would have baked the cake for the people.
Morality is objective, though,
Yeah, it is. But would you have been wrong?
and subjective.
If I would have said no,
If
I
you
don't.
would've said
No, absolutely not.
Okay.
No.
Because
But the bank is wrong.
and even that, we're subjecting them to our moral standard and saying that because my morality said you should do this, then you actually should do that. I think part of why, and we focus on redlining a lot, but I think part of why we see things in the light of, oh, that's racist, that's systematic racism, is because cats like Jesse Jackson, they started pushing this narrative of race on everything, including slavery, when slavery was never about race.
Right. And I don't agree with that.
So,
I
but
don't
now
agree
we
with
have
that.
this idea where a lot of things that hinder us, we blame on racism, and we find racism in things.
That's why I was pointing out what we started off listening to.
Mm-hmm.
Why isn't that being blown from every megaphone, every speaker, every television? Why isn't there rap bars about that?
There are.
Because it's not exciting.
From the conscious rappers. And
There's bars about stuff, but of course,
it's not what
It's not popular.
it's
Yeah,
not
it's
gonna
not-
get
It
played.
doesn't support the agenda.
yeah.
Right.
So they can't allow that. They're not going to promote conscious rappers the way they're going to promote nonsense rappers. They're not going to promote conscious thinkers, philosophers, teachers, the way they promote race baiters. They're just not going to. It doesn't fit their agenda. And their agenda is to keep us divided and keep us poor. So, independent.
When you say keep us, who is us?
Humanity.
Okay.
Yeah, that's definitely not race specific at all. It's each of us.
Do you think it's possible? Because you do see the changes. Again, to go back to the stat he referenced, 25% in the white community, 75%, give or take. Do you think it's because white people weren't afflicted by poverty so much, and that it attacked first the poor? Like if the welfare state aided, created, whatever you want to, but if that caused that, it affected both white, black, Latino, Asian, whatever. But it affected each community differently. And do you think it's based on morals? Do you think it's based on finance, income, poverty? Like, they didn't need a handout. They didn't need welfare.
What's crazy is even in that stat, we're not realizing that it sounds worse for blacks because it's 75% now from 25.
Yeah.
But you multiply that by 3. But to go from 5 to 25, even among whites, they were disproportionately
5
more
times
affected.
worse. Yeah.
So even in that, and with whites being a greater
population.
greater part of the
That's
population.
what I was thinking. Like if it's per
so
capita,
now
it's
it's
more white
really,
families. Yeah.
We're looking at the number 75 to 25. When if you actually consider, you know, those numbers compared to the population,
It's relevant to a degree, but there's other. You have to consider it in the big picture as well with those other factors.
so even that it takes away the racist net or perception of it. You know, because it wasn't just about blacks. Yeah, they were affected because you being having a need for the help made you more susceptible to reach out, you know, for the help. But when it's a matter of degrading the family or separating the family unit, it wasn't just about doing it to the blacks, you know.
So to wrap up, because we
went there,
which is good because I think we got some dealing with like banking, you know, what is possibly, you know, systematic racism.
I will say the one thing I think was that I can see as being racist, like an act, was the Minimum Wage Act, which completely destroyed the undercutting that black workers could do. Great.
You don't want them to earn a minimum wage?
No.
Okay.
No. Because every man should be able to bid on a job as low as he wants to go. You know, but when they did minimum wage, they actually ended up cutting out a lot of the black workers because you can no longer undercut your white counterpart.
See, that's chess. You're looking at I'll say they, like the person that disagrees with your argument is going to look at the board and saying you don't think everyone should earn at least a certain minimum to keep up with the cost of living, right? And they see it as that, but they didn't see what you're saying is a bigger move.
Yeah.
By them doing that, they'll say, yeah, we're going to make this, you know, standard that you have to earn at least this. And they know, whoever that may be, know that by doing that, we're going to box out this whole class of worker, this whole race, or this whole whatever.
Okay.
So you're saying it was a bigger
I just need
move.
to catch up just a little bit because that's the first time I'm hearing this thought process. Explain why you think that establishing a minimum wage or increasing the minimum
Establishing
the minimum wage
Establishing and
was
increasing,
a
really.
racist
I'll use the quote, it was the most anti-Negro law ever put in place. And
the minimum wage law.
Yep. And I believe that was Milton Friedman that said that. But the black construction workers would come up from the South and underbid on government jobs.
Okay.
Because they could go as low as they wanted. We'll do the work for this much. They'll do it for that much.
Because they already weren't making any money in the first place. Is that the reason?
They were making money. But it appears that white people had a higher, not standard, but a higher, they had to make more money to maintain what they had. So they couldn't go but so low.
Right,
in order to still maintain. But the blacks weren't like walking around with a whole bunch of assets.
A more minimal life.
Yes.
Yeah.
So they didn't need as much so they could undercut you.
Yeah.
So now
we talked about that in early
wage,
days here, that we don't have the overhead, this big corporation, these big insurance policies and all this stuff, so we can be more affordable. But if someone says we can't give that price,
right.
And now it's like, well, if at that price, I don't need to charge you $1,000 for what I charge $500 for.
Right.
But the other guy's charging $1,000, so now I have to charge $1,000.
Yeah.
And I think what he's saying is no one saw it from that point of view. So then it tells the guy that was willing and able, I can live off of $500.
Yeah.
And now you're telling me I can't do that.
And now if I must pay you a certain
makes
amount,
me lose a job.
My criteria is different.
Yeah.
Now I must pay a certain amount, so I'm going for the ones who I feel like absolutely deserve it. You know, now you got to show, now you got to have, you know, your credentials. Where before it was just, look, they'll do it for that. We can do it too. We'll do it for this.
Look, we've talked about, you know.
Yo, man, thanks for that.
Yeah,
Straight
right.
Because I never seen it from, man, that's crazy.
Man, I was just going to say, we've talked about a lot, right? And him stating that and your response being, explain that to me because I'd never heard that. Yeah. Why wasn't your response immediate to be like, no? You know, I should get the same thing that, you know, and not, you may be right to say that. You may be right to say you should get the same thing or whatever the platform is to justify your side of the, you know, but unless you ask him to explain it to you further and you actually, and that's what you just did, and you're like, huh, okay. You know, same thing with the redlining and things like that. That I think that's why I said I'm going to ask agitating questions.
Yeah.
It's not necessary. It's because I know it's a rebuttal, or I know it's a question, or I know it's something that could be logical. It could be something in the mix, and why I kind of hold the screws to you, to argue that side, and that's what we. And again, the podcast we just did, not wanting to have that conversation, or as soon as something's presented, you fall back into that comfort zone, that defense mechanism of saying, nah, bro. Yeah. Nah, I should get the same thing. We all need $15 for flipping burgers and punching.
I was about to bring that up.
Icons.
Because if that happened with $6 an hour and it undercut a lot of people, what do you think is going to happen with 15?
Yep.
It sounds good as a minimum wage, but if there's less
we
people
already
working.
living on less than 15.
Yeah.
It sounds good as a minimum wage, but if that is the minimum wage, you'll have less people working.
Yep.
Because the
more
companies
people
can't
on
afford.
welfare.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
the more fathers not in the home.
And people are actually fighting for that because it sounds good.
Everything sounds good. And you
Until it
mentioned
happens.
Thomas Sowell. He's big on he's anti-intellectual, the people that claim to have all the answers. And he doesn't he says they're not being honest, that they're not fixes, they're compromises. So I think minimum wage is one of them. In theory, it sounds great. The Affordable Care Act and things like that. In theory, it sounds great. When the rubber hit the road, it made companies fire people. It made companies give you less hours, so you're not a full-time employee. So it hurt the average worker, or it made your premium go up, or there was so many negative effects that I don't think we're being honest about because we want to be for something, But nonetheless, so we've talked about the fatherless situation,
Which is I think the most important thing.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, the rest of it are factors. Where do we? And we have to talk about where are we at with minimum wage, like jobs. Where are we at with what's going on with the banks, and really work through that conversation and ask the tough questions rather than just validating each other and maybe like, yeah, Bruce, it was drugs, and yeah, man, it's just crazy what they did, But I have to ask you a tough question in response. But how does that affect you today? Something like that.
Right.
And then we have to be willing to receive it, even when you throw it back to me or whatever. So. Who has the Twitter version? Who has not the fix? I'll ask this in closing. Who wants to give what the first step is to combat the fatherless home? Just the first step.
I think the first step, as far as that goes, is addressing everything in the community. Like, everything has to be addressed. The first thing that needs to be addressed, I don't know. But I just think, like, there has to be a dialogue. Like, you have to start somewhere. It has to start somewhere. There has to be some type of discussion. There has to be something. There has to be something put on the table instead of just being like, why ain't no daddies in the home?
White man.
Yeah, the white man. Got people. The white man. No, it's because you know what I mean? Just people, I
think once you connect the dots and show the overreaching effects of fatherless homes, that's where we start. To show how so much of what we blamed on external factors really comes from within, from the fatherless homes, which has its own causation. But when we show that so much has happened because of this, and we tie it in and actually show people, these are the actual effects of not having fathers in the home. And then people can see it and say, wow, I didn't know that had to do with this. I didn't know that came from this. Like, one guy proposed that the rise in atheism comes from fatherless homes. Because when the father's taken away, the structure is removed as well. And you're pretty much left to your own devices. You have no one guiding you. And then it's anger against the father. But there are so many proposed effects and so many actual direct effects, of the father not being there. So when we can kind of map this out in front of people and show them all this whole wall came from this one event, it magnifies the importance. Because right now, women say they don't need no man, and even women with children act like they don't need a man. You have the movement, the homosexual movement, which it is what it is, but you need a father. And what's crazy is it's not even, stepfathers are great, and I appreciate the ones that step up. But what the child actually needs is a biological mother and father. They actually they function a lot better when the biological mother and father is together. There are certain attributes that the mother has, that the father has, that no one else is going to be able to provide. You don't get it from two men because there's a motherly love that only comes from the mother.
yeah.
You know, there are aspects of a father that only come from the man. You know,
I said Twitter version.
oh, that was it.
This guy went from not talking at all.
He's like,
This guy went to atheism.
He's
He went
in
to
negative
lesbianism.
I paid for the extended version. You know, I mean, I paid for extended
Gotcha.
rights. I got extra characters. You know,
Man,
He
he got the new character.
I think,
one.
and I might get slaughtered for this, but hey, I'll take it. But I believe in this with this particular topic, P power. I believe that women, if the topic is about men not stepping up and doing what they're supposed to do, okay, young girls, do your part. Close them up. You know, if they aren't willing to put a ring on it, as you know, as Beyonce says, or whoever made that song.
She made them independent too.
yeah.
She made them independent too.
Okay, well, I'm just talking about that part. That part. But you know, because that's what I teach my daughters. You know, no sex before marriage. You know, and I'm not saying that my daughters are perfect, but at least you know, me and my wife, we're teaching them that.
That's a start.
Yeah, that's a start. Lock it up, because truth be told, if you do end up getting with a guy who's gonna make your child fatherless, then 9 times out of 10, she's gonna have to bear all of the burden. She's gonna have to be there she's gonna have to take care of the child care. She's gonna have to be there for all the sports games. She's gonna have to be there for, you know, all of the proms. She's gonna have to be there for all of that stuff. And not saying that you know that all dads are. I'm talking about the fatherless side of it. Then I say, young girls, don't do it until you're married. That's
You
what I
mean
would
like
say.
married, not hopeful to be married or
Oh,
the
no, I'm
promise
talking
of
about
marriage.
married,
Yeah.
like
the promise of marriage. Because what happens is we
Ring
say,
married.
you know, and I think a lot of girls, I'm giving the benefit of the doubt. I think a lot of girls want to sustain, you know, or abstain until they're married, but cats are slick talkers
I agree.
and talking straight out the pants, you know, and with the promises of marriage, and even with the actions that make it look so promising, and then afterwards, yeah, we're pretty much done here,
yeah.
you know. So actually, be married, you know,
Actually
be engaged.
married. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not just
But
engaged.
we also have
Yeah.
to reinforce the values of marriage, because the system is totally anti-marriage.
I agree. I agree.
I've heard someone, I can't remember who said it, but say, one, don't have kids until you're over 20. Then I heard and he said, don't have kids until you're married. And I agree with those two things. Based on like maturity level for one, and just holding out like. But I also think that if you take away, and I can't believe I'm saying this, but if you take away the assistance, then they're kind of forced to
Forced
do
responsibility.
something. Yeah, you know. Now, I'm not saying I think people should eat. I think people should have access to health care, because, I mean, if you're poor, you should be able to go to the hospital. Like, so I'm actually for Medicaid.
Take
and
away TANF.
I'm not. That's what it is. I'm for you eating.
What is
I'm
that?
for you getting help medically.
TANF is
Money.
Something. Oh Lord, for
I'll look
needy
it up.
families. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
most women get it when they're pregnant, and they're taking the father up for child support. Most times, when TANF gets involved, they're getting the father for child support.
That's when they actually get a check
Yeah,
that you
they
can
get
take
money,
to the
yeah.
bank and get cash for. You know, it's not the
someone's
same
got
as
to-
food stamps.
someone gotta pay
or
that back, though.
Medicaid.
Yeah, so they'll.
And they get that from the father.
Yep.
They get that from the father through child support, arrears, and things like that.
So I think that should be done away with. Like, you know what I mean? I don't think we should be assisting financially. So I think if you take that away, yeah, it forces responsibility.
It's a risk too, because sometimes TANF helps with childcare bills. You know, because then again, there's purchase of care. Man, the system
Yeah,
is
purchase of
God is-
care, okay. But like you said, the TANF, no, like, I don't know. No,
Technical
that's my
assistance for
thing.
needy families.
If we
I
got
think
back
that's
to
what
the
it is.
village raising the child, we wouldn't need all that.
I agree.
Yeah.
Like, if I know that even in my wrong, one, the village is gonna hold me accountable, you know, and say, look, you need to be there for that child. And I know it's hard. We'll help you, but you're gonna be there for that child. You know, you're gonna take care of that child. But where there is a village which helps to raise the child, there is no need for the government to raise the child. Because when the government comes in, they're gonna raise the child and remove your hand.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Sir.
I just want to say one more thing.
You're welcome.
There was a time in hip hop when there was self-destruction. They were rapping about those things.
Yeah.
That I still believe that exists, but you know there's an agenda, so it's gone now, underground.
Yeah, and now that you've already influenced the listener, so the listener only responds to certain things, more so.
Yeah.
You know, which Well, boy, man, I have to. You know, if you watch this, if you listen to it, and definitely for the participants, I definitely have to thank everyone. Difficult, serious. So far, it's the most serious thing we've discussed. Yeah. Because I mean, it deals with your children. You know, it deals with how you was raised. You know, so to the listener, there was some difficult moments. There's probably still some things you're dealing with, but. You know, you'll be able to either email, comment via, YouTube, or if you're listening on the podcast, you can have the website. You can message if you want to talk to someone specifically about a point. I'll give you these gentlemen's address so you can go to their houses.
That's a lie. That's a lie.
Brother Terry 66 at yahoo.com. That's the only address I got.
Well, see, now you gave them that, and then they're gonna find everything else.
Delete.
Yeah. Seriously though, if you want to be a part of the conversation, reach out. If you're local, you want to be here, or if you're not local and want to do something via Skype or Google, willing to hear. Willing to talk, willing to hear. As long as we're all trying to get to the same place, I think that's definitely cool. So, thanks to all the listeners, viewers, participants. Acts 2 and 42. That's it.